Okay, so let's get going. Please feel free to stop me mid-sentence and ask your questions if you want to. Otherwise, I will have a little time after the session for questions and answers, so you can jot them down and ask them later on, and I'll repeat anything that needs repeating. So for tests, we can create them in two ways. You can have them either in your content area, create them directly in your menu, okay, and then they will appear here immediately. Or you can go to your course management section, course tools, and then test surveys and pools, tests, and build the test from here. So the steps are exactly the same in building the actual test. It's just two ways of starting it. The problem is if you build the test here, you need to go and deploy it in the learning content wherever you are placing it. And for that reason, I always just do it directly in the course menu because it's all in one. Whereas here, if you build the test here, you have to do two steps. So even if you're not ready to deploy the test, you can still build it here. And let me just put my people here so I can mute when I need to. All right, you can still build the test here and still hide it if you don't want to launch it just yet. So it's always easier just to build it directly in the content area. So I always build mine here. Now you can do it two ways. You can either build it in your learning units. So you might have some information on learning unit 1, and then the test is here under the learning unit part of this section or chapter or module, whatever you call your sections. Or you can have a separate space for it, like I do on this menu. We also have separate spaces on the templates that we have. So if you're interested in templates, let me know and I can put up a template for you. But then we normally have assignments, tests, and portfolio of evidence separately. So the students just go here and all the tests will be in this one spot. But that's up to you. That's a choice that you can make. So I'm going to build a test today in my test section here. And to do it, I just go to assessments, test. Now, if you inherit subjects, with a lot of you do, you inherit the subjects from the previous years and maybe other lecturers have been working on them and they've been building tests, you'll find a list of all of the tests that they've had on the subject previously here. If it's a new subject, however, and it's your first time creating tests, then you won't have any under this list. If you want to build on an existing test, you just click on the test name and then submit. But today we're going to create a brand new test. So I'm going to click create. And the first thing it's going to ask me is name, description, and instructions. Now, remember, everywhere in eThuto where we have this orange asterisk, that is a required field, and it means it has to be filled out before you can submit. So in this case, only the name is a required field. So you do not have to put in a description or instructions, but they are available if you need them to. So I'm just going to put this up as test 1. And the reason why these are separate is because you can release them separate. So for instance, if you want to have a description of the test, but just for you, and instructions for the students, but you want them only to be able to see the instructions and not the description, or vice versa, you can do that. And that's why the two boxes are separate. So I'm just going to say this is test 1, term 1, something that maybe I want just for me, so that I can recognize the test quickly. And then instructions for students is the typical things that you would have. Test counts 100 marks. You have 2 hours, etc., etc. You can even put in things like, you know, what you would have on your test front page. You can put those in, who the assessors are, moderators are, etc. You can put all that in your description or instructions. Submit. And now it's going to take me to the test canvas. So the test has 2 ends, the back end, which is the options and how the test is presented and released, to whom it's released and all of those things. And then it has the front end, which we call the canvas, the test canvas. And this is where we actually build the test. So this is where our questions, marks, and etc. are. Okay, so this is the canvas. As you can see, I've got no questions yet. And here are the options for putting in questions. Now, uploading questions is a tricky one, but if it's something that you want to do, this is where you upload the questions from a TXT file. So you put your questions in a Notepad file and you upload them directly into the test here. So this is something you're interested in. I also have a video on the YouTube channel, and you can find it under playlists, tests. And here is a video, instructors, upload questions from Notepad. Okay, and you can go and watch it. It's pretty straightforward. It shows you exactly step by step how to do that. So you can upload questions from a TXT file from Notepad. But honestly, for me, it's more complicated than just creating the questions straight into Blackboard. Reuse questions is if you want to reuse questions from previous tests. But as I showed you earlier, this subject has no questions and no previous tests. So we can't use previous questions. We're going to create questions today from scratch. Okay, so here are all of the question types that you have. So we have 2 calculated questions, either or, essay. So that's where students write an essay, file response, where they respond to your prompt with a file that they upload from their computers. Fill in multiple blanks, fill in the blank. So with fill in the blank is at the end. So this will be something like, what is the capital of Portugal? And then they have to put in Lisbon, one word, only one blank. Whereas fill in multiple blanks, you can put the blanks in between the sentence or the structure of the question, what you have. Hotspot, we put up an image and we allocate a certain area that is the correct area, and the student has to click inside that area to get the correct marks. So for instance, if you have a schematic or something of an engine and you want them to indicate the piston or something, and then they click on it, and then that's a hotspot question. Jumble sentence, it has like these drop down. So you jumble up a sentence and the students have to put it in the correct order. Matching, column A, column B, they match, simple as that. Multiple answer is like multiple choice, only you can have more than one correct answer. Where multiple choice, they can only select one correct answer. Opinion scale, we don't really use in tests. This is more for when we make surveys, but it's like 1 to 5, and then the student put in their opinion. Ordering is when you have a certain order of things, and the students has to put the phrases in the correct order. Quiz bowl, I don't cover this one. It's an American thing. We don't use it. It's where you rephrase the statement as a question, and we really never use this. Short answer is just where the student inputs a short answer, like a definition, and then obviously true and false. So I'm going to do a couple of these to show you how they work. I'm not going to cover all of them because some of them have the same steps, meaning like, for instance, fill in the blank and jumbled sentence uses the same steps to create the question. So if you know how to do fill in multiple blanks, you know how to do jumbled sentence. And then we'll look at the rest of them. Okay. If you are more interested in the question types, you can go to your browser and just search Blackboard. Just make sure to put in Blackboard Learn question types. And it should be the first response that you get. No, this one is not Learn. Sorry, let me just go and find. Let's do it from the start in Blackboard. So I'm going to try and find. So you can go to your help section here at the bottom, help for instructors. Normally when I Google it, I find original experience directly, but today it gave me ultra experience, which it shouldn't do. We use original experience. Let me just mute. There we go. So go to original experience. And then here under this menu, you have everything to do with our Blackboard. Everything that our eThuto has is on this list. And you can learn to do absolutely everything from this list. They have videos and instructions and things. But what I want to show you today is under test, pools, and surveys, they have question types. Let me just grind. There we go. Question types. So if you click on that, it has a little link for each question type. It has little videos as well that shows you how they work exactly. So if I do not cover a question type today that you're interested in, you can come and find it here, or you can send me an email and I'll go through it with you. But like I said, I'm going to cover those that have different ways of setting up, so you'll know how to set up all of them. Okay, let's get going. All right, so the first one I'm going to set up is either or. So I click either or. Now remember, orange asterisk is a required field, so we do not have to put in a title, but you can if you like. Mostly this will be something like chapter 1 or section A, or something that defines that this is a different section from the next, or anything like that. So let's use sections for our example. And we're going to say question either or. So I'm making a statement. And your question text is in a normal content editor box. So all the rules apply. You can change your font any way you want. You can add emojis and images, anything that you need to add in here. And then we say the answer orientation. So is it going to be vertical? So one above the other, or horizontal, one next to each other. We recommend vertical if you know your students are going to be writing from mobile devices, because the vertical format supports mobile devices just better. So in other words, the questions are like on top of each other, and that's better for a mobile device because most mobile devices used are in the portrait format. And now we decide what kind of answer choice is this. Now I made a statement, so it can be yes or no, but I have the option to say agree, disagree, right, wrong, true, false. So it's really the same way, 4 different ways of saying the exact same thing, but it depends on the phrasing of the questions. So I'm going to use right, wrong now. Doesn't really matter. The student is going to choose. Now this statement that I placed here was right. So I want to make sure that the right radial is checked. And this means that if the student selects right, they will get the marks allocated for this question. Now, the next 3 things we have, you'll find under each question. Okay, so I'm only going to cover them this once so you can see. And these are all optional. You don't have to put them in. Now, feedback, we have a box for correct response feedback. And basically, this is what is going to appear if the student gets the answer correct. So this can be something like, some more information, perhaps. Sorry, I'm just muting. More information on the question. I'm just going to repeat the statement. I wasn't actually thinking before I placed this up there. All right. Or for incorrect feedback, I'm using a very sad example, but it's the only thing we think about these days. All right. So if the student gets the answer incorrect, this text will appear. If the student gets the answer correct, this text will appear. And this is very helpful for immediate feedback. If you, we do have a student-centered approach at CUT. So this is very great for students. It just takes a little bit longer to set up your questions if you have to do this for every question. What I like to do normally here is actually have some extra reading or referring back to, especially for the incorrect, referring back to the notes. So say, go and read page 45 again, or whatever the case may be, and put in a link maybe to the article or what that is. So it's very great for immediate feedback, but like I say, it takes a while. But remember, you can reuse questions and you can use them year after year. So once you've done it, it's done. You can use this question again next year and have the feedback still in there. So if you maybe put in some extra effort, set up a test with this, it is quite nice to have. Next one is categories and keywords, and this is where we tag our questions. Now, in tagging questions, this is so that we can quickly identify them, put them into groups or something like this. For instance, levels of difficulty, we all know this, we need it for our blueprints. So I will say this is a level 2 Bloom question, or whatever the case may be. And you just tag them with names that you choose yourself, or maybe categories. You say, this is from chapter 1. Maybe topics or keywords, maybe this is term 1 test. And you can, put as many as you need to. And later when you have a whole bulk of questions and you're building tests from new tests, but from existing questions, it's easier to find your questions if you tag them. You can just say, I want to see all the chapter 1 questions and then just select from there, or I want to see all the term 1 questions and select from there, or all the level 2 questions, etc., etc. So that's how you can categorize your questions. Then we have instructor notes. So this is a box where you can put in notes that the student does not see. So only a person on this page with instructor status will be able to see these notes. So if you need to put in some notes for your teaching assistant or someone who helps you mark your assessments, or maybe for the moderator or anything like that, or just notes for yourself, you can put those in here and the student won't be able to see them. Okay, and then we have submit and create another, and that will reopen another either or type question. So if you're doing a test and you're creating a lot of the same question types, you can just now submit and create another. If we want to change the question type, then we just click submit. Okay. Now we have our first question. We can see there's the question in a statement form, and then the answer is right. And there is the feedback for correct and incorrect answers. We can also see that this question is worth 10 points, which is the default. And we can change that manually by just changing the 10 to whatever you need it to be, and it will change up. And you can see that the total points is now 2 for one question. Now, if you're going to create a lot of questions with the same mark value, so for instance, you're going to create a lot of multiple choice questions and they're all going to be 1. What you can do is you can go up here to question settings and change the default value of the scoring to 1. Then instead of being 10, they're going to be 1. So if you're going to have a test full of 1-point questions or maybe 2-point questions or whatever, you can go and change the default value to suit you, and then you don't have to redo every one of them manually. Under the question settings, you have some other things that you can go and look at, maybe using images and files as answers or feedback. That's sometimes nice to have, but it does clutter up the process, which means it has these extra lines in your test now, so that you have to answer to add images or files. So I normally leave them unchecked unless I know I'm going to use images or files as answers in this test. So for instance, you have a marketing class and you want them to do a multiple choice question, but instead of choosing the word, they have to choose the logos, and these are images. Then you will have to come and click this box first to allow that. Okay. All right, so from now on, the questions will each get 1 point. I think that's what I stated, yeah. Let's go and look at some more. So essay question, very simple. You ask the student to write an essay and they get a big text box and they get to write their essay on screen in real time. So again, we can have, let's say this is still section A, and then your question or your prompt. And then we have the model answer. So model answer, the student is not going to see. This is just as your memorandum answer. So you can put in, what are you looking at? I'm going to look at introduction. I should be looking at, the context, setting, scene, etc. Blah, blah, blah. Body should be looking at, plot. Sorry, I don't have an English degree, so I'm not really knowing what I'm doing right now. Okay. Conclusion, we'll be looking at, how it ends up. Okay, so that could be your model answer, whatever you need for moderating or assessing the test. So this will be your memorandum answer, and the student does not see this. This is only seen by you or whoever is marking the assessment. So you can put it in there, but again, it's not an orange asterisk, so it's not a required field. You don't have to put in a model answer. You just have to put in the prompt. And then the student will get a box where they can write the answers. Now, the one thing that you have extra in an essay question that you don't have in a lot of them is add rubric. So because an essay obviously is something that you can use a rubric to mark, you have the opportunity to create a rubric here. So you just select an old rubric, or you can create a new one, and it will bring up a little pop-up menu, and you can just put in then you can build your rubric here. So you can change it. I like to change it to points range. It just works easier for me. And then edit. So we do have a video that takes you extensively on creating rubrics on the YouTube channel. So if I'm going to quickly now, otherwise I can show you if we have some time at the end, if this is something that you're interested in. But it's basically just building a rubric like you would build. So I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 6. Okay, let's say this essay is going to be worth 30 points. Rubrics for assignment and these types of questions really speed up your workflow. So if you have time to put in a rubric, it really helps because you just go and choose the value that the student deserves for that section, and then it does the adding up for you. So I'm going to submit my rubric. I'm not going to put in criteria now. I just wanted to put it in there. You can allow the students to view the rubric so they can see what they are looking at. And then we have the categories and keywords and instructor notes again. All right, so that's essay question. Now I put in default 1, but obviously this one is that big one. So I'm just going to change that to, I think it was 30 we said. There we go. All right, next question type we're going to do is fill in multiple blanks. Now, I'm not going to cover fill in the blank because they work exactly the same way. Now, fill in multiple blanks has a variable insert that you have to put in. So this is the way that works. It should put it in here somewhere. Oh, there we go. Question uses variables that identify It doesn't actually show you how. That's silly. Anyway, I'm going to show you how, so it's not a problem. So we're going to put in a statement here with blanks. And these blanks are going to be little boxes very similar to this one that the student needs to fill out. We can also tell the system what these are so that they can, the system will mark it as correct or incorrect. Now, because the system marks the fill in multiple blanks question, it means that you can't be too complicated with the answer. So it can't be a whole sentence. Mainly one word inputs work best. So let's say this is now going to be section B. And then we're going to put in a question. So I'm going to say, and my first variable is going to be lamb, but I'm going to put in A square bracket A. Okay, so square bracket A square bracket, sorry. So that indicates there's a variable. So the square brackets, you can use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just always use A, B, C. It doesn't matter, but as long as you have those square brackets, the system will recognize it as that's where your blank is going to be. So I'm going to put in B here for fleece. Let's put in one for Mary because I want to show you how the caps work. Capital letter 1 works. All right, now you can do as many as these. When you run out of alphabet, you can just start with capital A, B, C, D, or you can start with 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can have like a whole essay with fill in the blanks if you want to. We're just going to do 4 variables for today. Now, partial credit is very important, and there's a couple of questions where this is going to pop up. Questions where there are more than one correct answer in one question. And what partial credit is if the student answers A, B correctly, but C, D incorrectly, and this question is worth 4 marks, how many marks do they get? If I say yes for partial credit, they get 2 of 4 marks. If I do not check this box, I know they get 0. So not checking the partial credit box means that the student gets 0 or everything. So it's an all or nothing kind of situation. Whereas if you check the box, then they get marks for the correct answers and incorrect ones get, you know, a -1 or however many these. So in this case, I have 4 variables. So if this question was out of 8 and the student had 3 correct and 1 incorrect, they would get 6 if the box is checked. If the box is not checked, they would get 0. They only get the 8 if they get all 4 correctly. Okay, so remember that for allow partial credit. So I'm going to allow it. Move on to the next one. Now it's going to give you a box for each of the variables that you had. So you can see here's my A, B, C, D. It made the boxes for me. And now I'm going to input the answers that is going to be correct. Now you can have more than one answer. So for instance, if you use synonyms, for instance, Mary had a little, we know this has to be lamb, but maybe you're going to allow sheep as well. So I can put in 2. So the first one needs to be lamb and the second one can be sheep. This means the student can put in either of these and they will both be seen as correct. You've got a couple of options here for the way the answer is marked. Contains means that it needs to contain LAMB. That means if the student puts in lambs with an S or lambing, ING, or D-lamb, which I know makes no sense, but just as an example, it will still recognize the LAMB and give the student the correct answer. Whereas if you leave it on exact match, they need to put it in as LAMB or SHEEP. Whereas if you, for instance, can, anticipate spelling errors and you want to maybe make room for them, you can try contains. If you want, you can even try pattern match, which is where you sort of input things like, I'm going to say you input dots, for instance, but you need to check the pattern, and it's quite, so that means if the student puts in limb, they'll be correct as well. If they input lamb, it'll be correct as well. Okay, so you can input patterns like this. Now, I'm not going to cover pattern match today. It's too complicated, but if you are interested, you're welcome to give me a call and I'll show you exactly how it works. But it takes an extremely long time to get all the patterns in. And honestly, students at a higher education level should be able to spell correctly. So it's fine to, you know, make it exact match, in my opinion. But it depends on your subject field. All right, so we have, it's fleece. Now, again, here we could probably put in fleece and wool. And then everywhere that Mary went. Now, this one is a different one. Because it's a name, I'm going to write it with a capital letter, and I'm going to say, check the case sensitive box. That means that if the student types in Mary without the capital, it will be incorrect because it's case sensitive. So you can also do that. The lamb was sure to go. Okay, now let's go to next. We've put in our variables, and then we have a chance to put in feedback for correct and incorrect categories and keywords, and the instructor notes again, and submit. And that is a fill in the blank question. Now, these are quite handy. So if I were you, I would really look into them, because you can do quite a lot of higher level questions with this if you just kind of think around your content and so on. But it's really a nice question type to use. Okay, so you can see here is your question, and you can see the answers for your different variables. And now I can input, for instance, I want 4 for this one, because I put in partial credit, so a student will get 1 for each of the correct answers. So they don't have to correct all 4 to get any points. Okay, so let's have a look at the next one, which I'm going to show is Hotspot. And this is the one I was talking about, the image. So what I'm going to say is here, indicate the eye of the panda. And I think I have an image of a panda on my PC. That's why I'm saying that. All right, so you say in the question text what the student needs to, you know, identify. And then another one is to get the image. So I'm just going to go with, yeah, there we go. Going to upload the image. Now that I think of it, a panda has 2 eyes. Let's make it nose. Otherwise, I'm making it too complicated. Nose of the panda. Next, it's going to upload the image for you and ask you to say where the correct field is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the mouse over where I want the student to click. And if the student clicks anywhere inside the square, they will get correct answer. Okay, so they will get the point. You can make it as small or as big as you need to, depending on how specialized this is. So if you want to be really strict, for instance, you can do it like that. I like to give it some space just to give the students, you know, a bit of a chance. And you could clear and try again as many times as you need to. I always get it wrong the first one. There we go. That's a nice nose. Okay, and then you have your feedback and so on, and we're going to submit. And now you've got a hotspot question. Obviously, you won't ever want them to identify the nose on a panda, but maybe this will be handy for you, especially those of you in health sciences and life sciences. If you have schematics, you want them to identify certain things, or maybe an X-ray, and they need to identify a part or something like that. Okay, next one we're going to do is Ritu. You have a question. Please go ahead.
I just would like to hear for the hotspot question. Is it possible to have only one layer, like a square, like you said in a diagram, you know, instead of giving them an option, identify mouse, we can give or mouth or whatever. We can have many, you know, hotspot and they can label them correctly. Will it be possible?
In that case, no, it's not possible with the hotspot type question. What people do in that case is they build a multiple choice, multiple blanks question. So they will say, identify the following. A, and then they put in their bracket B, C, D. And now you insert your image. So in your case, a schematic or something. And in mine, I don't have anything on there, but yours will have a little line that points to the eye that says A, one that points to the whatever that says B, one that points to the leg that says C, and maybe an ear for D. So you will have these all labeled, and then the student needs to complete them. So the student will then have to put in the answers like ear, nose, eye. What don't I have? Leg. There we go. And then in that way, you get them to label something. So you need to have images with, little lines in A, B, and C. And then say, for instance, there's a little line there. Let me just show you what I mean exactly. Just going to make a quick. So in other words, you will need an image that is going to go. Just want to see what did I say they were? Ear, nose, eye. Okay, so ear is A, nose is B, eye is C, and leg is D. So you need an image like this. And then that way the student will complete the question as needed. So that's normally how people do labeling. Does that make sense, Ritu?
It's okay. I have done that kind. I was thinking of trying something different.
Okay. Yeah, no, this is the only way I've figured out how to do that type of question. Because with multiple, this hotspot, you can only do one spot. So it's not very good for labeling. All right, let's move on to next type. Jumble sentence. Yeah, that's a good one. So this is the one where you get the drop downs and you need to mark. So I'm going to say, so I put in variables again. So when I wake up in the morning, I first, then I So a student is going to get dropped down with these variables and they put them in the correct order. Again, I'm going to allow partial credit. And now we put in those answers. So I've got A, B, C, and D. And you can have more answers in your drop down than you have variables. So for instance, I can have 7 here to confuse them all. I've just chosen 8, I think, to confuse them, even if there are only 4. So I'm going to say, wash my face. Wait, let's not put that in the first one because that's the correct first one. You put them in a random order. So you want to kind of put them all jumbled up. The next thing that I do is probably brush my teeth, depending on what day it is. What did I say then? After that, okay, let's say eat breakfast. And then finally I leave for work. Okay, then we put in some, other ones here. Okay, so you can put in as many as you need to there, and then we're going to tell the system which ones are correct. So we click next. Now, when I wake up in the morning, I first wash my face, then I brush my teeth. After that, I eat my breakfast, and then I leave for work. And the student has to put them in the correct order like that. So the student is going to be faced with the exact same year. a drop-down menu with all of these options, and they have to put in the correct one. Okay, so that's jumbled sentence. Also a nice one that you can do quite a lot with if you kind of think about the way you set up your questions. Okay, so I've got 4 variables, so I'm going to give it a 4 again. Right, next question type we have is multiple answers. So I'm only going to cover multiple answer, not multiple choice, because they're exactly the same. The only difference is in multiple answer, you can choose more than one correct answer, whereas in multiple choice, you only have one correct answer. So in this case, I'm going to say choose 2 reptiles. I can choose the answer numbering. So if you want the answers to be numbered in a certain way, so they can be 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3 in the Roman numerals. I'm going to put A, B, C. Again, we can do vertical or horizontal. Again, I would recommend vertical if you know your students are going to be writing from a mobile device. Again, we can allow partial credit, which we want to do. But now here is a tricky thing that you must always remember with a multiple answer. If the student should select A, B, C, and D, they will get the 2 answers. So you want to say allow negative scores for incorrect answers. So with a multiple answers, always when you allow partial credit, also allow negative scores for incorrect answers. That means the student will get minused every time they do an incorrect answer, and that will hopefully avoid, or have students not try that ABCD trick. So remember that. I'll show you now when we write the test. I'll select all of them so you can see what that looks like. You can even allow a negative overall score for the question, meaning that the student can end up with -2 for this question. And you can show them in random order, which is nice unless you have questions following up. So for instance, D answer is A and B. So if you have that type of question, don't show them in random order, because then A for you won't be A for the student. Okay. Now, I'm going to say A and B is correct because I'm going to show them in a random order anyway. So it doesn't matter. You check the boxes of the 2 that are going to be the correct ones. So this could have been B and C. And I'm just going to have to uncheck A. It doesn't matter as long as you have 2 correct ones. And what are we doing? Reptiles. Okay, so I'm going to say mute. Panther. And then I'm going to put in the 2 fake ones. Okay, and the student has to go and collect. Now, remember, we have partial credit here. Now, in some instances where you have partial credit, you won't need to put in, but in the instance where you select the correct answers, you will need to input their partial credit. Now, you can either go and put in 50-50 partial credit for each of these, or you can just say update partial credit and it will do it automatically if they are equal. But if some of these are, you can put them in a 60-40 as long as they come up to 100. If one of these answers may be way more than the other one, for instance, a newt might be a bit more difficult than crocodile, then you can put it in that way. As long as it adds up to 100, the system will take it, or you can just update and it will distribute the credit evenly. So in this case, 50-50. If there were 3 correct ones, and I updated the partial credit, it would have been 33, and the one at the end will have a 4. Okay, but we only have 2 correct. So I'm going to update again so I get back to my 50-50, and then we're done with this question. Okay, like I say, we don't really use opinion Likert scale, so I'm not going to do that. Ordering works the same as jumbled sentence, only you you don't have variables in it. You order whole sentences. Quiz bowl, not a great one. Short answer and true or false, we've already kind of covered. Short answer is set up exactly the same way as essay, only they get a smaller text box. So this is for definitions or things like that, whereas essay, they get a large text box where they can write the whole essay. True and false is set up exactly the same as either or. You don't have a true options though, you only have true or false. All right, so I'm going to stop here for the question typed, but you're welcome to contact me later if you want me to repeat something or go back to there or cover any of the question types that I didn't cover today. So now we're going to go and finish up our test. We have 43 marks, which is strange, but it's fine. And we are going to say, okay. And now submit. because we want to deploy our test. So the test is already created. If I go to test surveys and pools now, I'll see my test there. There's test 1 created on 18th March, 10 past 12. So it's already there. I'm just now going to deploy it. So it saves as you go. So the moment you click OK, the test is done. But now we're also going to deploy it, which means we have to go through the options. So options, we have our name. You can edit the name here if you wish. And again, the description. Now, do I want to show the description to the students before they begin the test, or do I only want to show the instructions, or both, or neither? So I'm just going to show the instructions. You can open the test in a new window, which means at the top, it's going to open in a new window. This is very nice for open book tests where you want the student to be able to access the page as well for their notes and things. Otherwise, you can leave it as no. I'm going to make this one available for the students straight away. You can leave that on as no and later edit it if you want students still not to be able to see it. You can add a new announcement for students, which will send out an announcement that comes onto their activity stream. And this will say a new test has been created and these are the parameters. So it will show the instructions and the marks and so on. You can give students more than one attempt. You can either give them unlimited attempts or you can number the attempts they have, or you can uncheck that they only have one attempt. If you have multiple attempts, which of those attempts will count towards the final score? We normally leave it defaulted on last mark. That means the third one of 3 or the second of 3. So it depends on second of 2. So it depends on the one the student did last, and that one counts towards the marks. Because the reason they write another one is probably because they had problems. So it makes sense to leave it on last mark, but you have other options here. Forced completion is very important to note. So how this works is if you check forced completion, it means that the student has to start the test and finish it in one sitting. And this is great because that means if a student goes to another tab, or they close the browser, or they close the computer, or whatever the case may be, this test stops, it submits automatically, and the student is not allowed back into the test. Okay, so this is great if you know your students are going to be writing somewhere where they have a solid internet connection. If you don't know what's going to happen if they drop internet connection, even if it's just for a fraction of a second, is the test is going to close because it's going to see the student as leaving the test, where the student's internet connection just had a bit of a hitch and dropped momentarily. So be very, very careful with forced completion, because what happens then is we have to give that student another attempt, and then they have to start the test from scratch. So if you don't know if your students are going to have really good internet connection, I wouldn't check this box. It gives a lot of trouble. But if they're going to be, in a computer lab or somewhere and you're pretty sure of the solid internet connection, then by all means, you can check it. Set timer, so how long the test is for. This is a quick test. So I'm going to give it 20 minutes. And then you can give it an auto submit by checking on, which means when 20 minutes lapses, the test is handed in automatically. The student can be mid-sentence and the test will submit. If you don't check it, then the student will see that there's 20 minutes and that they are going over time. So it depends on what you need to do there. Display after and until date. So that's when the test is open. So let's say this test opens today and it opened up at noon. And it's going to close tomorrow, the 19th of March, and it's going to close at end of day. I'm sorry, I always say this when we do the display after and until date, so you're probably tired of hearing me say this, but remember especially with the display until dates, students have a habit of taking chances here. So if you, for instance, put in 12 midday, you want them to have 24 hours for this test. In other words, they can start at 12 noon and they finish at 12 noon on the next day. There are going to be those who say, but ma'am, I thought this meant 12 in the evening. In other words, 000 the next day, 20 March. So it's always best for these to put in a time that has no discrepancy. I mean, there's no way a student can misconstrue this as any other time than 1 minute before midnight on the 19th of March, or something like 13:30. They can't misconstrue that as any other time. So always remember, especially with your until times or due dates, to put in a time that is, there's only one way of interpreting that. Otherwise, they are going to try and they're going to say, no, but we misunderstood. Password, you can put in a password here. So you type in any kind of password, and that means the student has to put in that password before they're allowed to access the test. And there are a myriad of reasons why you might want to use that. but it is available for you. Availability exceptions we normally use after we've created the test. Sometimes a student comes and they were sick on the day, and then we add them as an exception. So say, for instance, I have one of my students, this one was ill on the day they wrote the test, or let me know that she's going to be ill on the day they write the test. I can give this student a different set of rules. Maybe the student gets an extra chance, so they get 4 attempts instead of the 3 that the others got. Maybe the student gets more time, or maybe the student gets to write the test on the 20th, and it's open to them until the 21st. So they have a different set of times when the test will be available to them. Okay, and you can add as many users as you need to, and they can all have exceptions. Due date is if you want the test to show up on the calendar. So if you know your students are going to use the calendar, if this test is open like mine for a full day, it's going to be due at 12. I think we actually said 13:30 in the end. It's going to be due at 13:30. And that's nice because then it shows up on the calendar. They can have a quick link from there. You can also not allow them to start this date. But now, if you check this box and you have exceptions, that means that your exception will now not be able to write the test when the test is available for them, because this is, so remember that. Don't check this box if you have exceptions, because that will override. All right. Please never, ever, ever check this box. Never. It hides the results of the test, and we cannot retrieve it. It's impossible to retrieve. In the US, they use this thing where they have reflection tests for students when a big test is upcoming. So they give them tests to write instead of letting them study the material. And then what they do is to boost the student's confidence. They hide the results so that the lecturer doesn't see the results, and the student knows that the marks are only shown to them. But as I said, to protect student privacy, you can see it stands here. This choice cannot be reversed without deleting all the attempts. So please never check this box unless you absolutely know what it does and what it means. Okay, so we can't retrieve that if it happens to you. Okay, include this test and grade score calculations. You can just leave that on. That means that the test will be included in your weighted columns or your toted columns or any of the columns that you have that calculate. Finally, we have the feedback. So remember, we put in some feedback and we have results and things. When do students see this? So for instance, the score per question, when do they see this? After submission. So do you want them to see the correct scores? So for all of the questions where the system marks, they can see immediately the score they got for those questions. Do you want them to see the answers? The correct answers. So if you have any correct answers, for instance, in our essay questions, we had a model correct answer. Can they see that or not? And submit it or not. Then also the feedback. So feedback, we put in one question, some feedback. So I'm going to check that and the student can see that automatically. Let me just, oops, sorry, I went all the way to the top. I wanted to show you the little bubble, but now it's not letting me. Okay, that's weird. All right, so show incorrect questions. It shows questions that were incorrect and shows to the student. So you can decide when they see all of these things. Now, you can have a couple of rules too here. For instance, maybe you don't want the student to see the answers. You want them to see that maybe only after the due date. So they can see the scores they got for each question, but they can only see the answers after the due date. And they can see the feedback right when they submit, but like so. So you can go and decide when they see what. Okay, you can also uncheck all of these. So if you don't want your students to see anything, I know a lot of you choose to do that for exams. You don't want them to see anything, then you uncheck all the boxes and they can't see anything. They just see that they've written a test, it took them this long to write the test, and that's it. Okay, presentation all at once. We recommend that you use one at a time because most of our students write on a mobile device. One at a time presents better and saves better. This just means that a student gets one question at a time and they have to click the little arrow to say next. whereas all at once means all the questions are on screen all at once. And that works really good for a computer like this, because you just scroll down and go through the questions all at once. But like I say, for a mobile device, it doesn't work ideally. In that case, we recommend one at a time. Also, if you have big questions like essay questions, definitely go one at a time. Otherwise, the question just takes over the whole screen for a student that works on a small screen, for instance, and it's not really well presented. If you do choose one at a time, you can also prohibit backtracking, which means that there's no left arrow. So if a student goes from question 1 to 2, they can't go back to question 1. So if there's a reason you might want that, then you can prohibit backtracking. Otherwise, you can just leave that unchecked. You can also randomize your questions, which means that question 1 for student A is not the same as question 1 for student B, etc. So each student gets a random order of the same questions. And this is quite handy if they write in a lab and they sit next to each other. That means that they can't really cheat, because it's going to be very obvious if you have to read the questions before you can see what question your student is answering on the screen at that time. And the chance that they're going to be on the same question at the same time is very little if you randomize your questions. Okay, and that is it. I'm quickly going to show you how we write the test and then how we assess those couple of questions that we had that does not get marked by the system. Now, just quickly, I'm just going to go and edit my test because I want to go back to the canvas, so you can keep adding questions here to your existing test. And I just want to quickly show you that essay question, file response question, and short answer question are the only 3 question types that need instructor input, which means you have to physically go into each of the students' tests and allocate marks to those question types. Everything else is marked by the system automatically. Okay, so remember that. So if you have any of these 3, essay, file response, or short answer in your questions will show up and needs marking, and you will need to go and mark it. If you have none of those 3 question types, your system will mark it automatically and it will go straight to the grade center. So I'm just going to go back here. Here's my test. I can also go edit the test options and go and edit any of these options that we've selected. Maybe I want to add some more exceptions, or maybe I want to extend the due date or anything like that. You can go and add. Because I'm just quickly going to go to a student view. Just show you how some of those, what that test looks like. The student is very behind. I think it makes the student nervous when their activity stream is all red like that. So now what did I do? Oh, do you remember I made this exact student the exception? Sorry, that was stupid. I made the student that I used to demonstrate the exception. That was not very bright. So I'm just going to delete this student as the exception, because remember, for this student, we said that it's only open between 20 and 21. So I'm just going to remove that student, submit. Sorry, that was a blank moment for me. Did not think that through. So I'm just going to refresh. All right, there we go, student. Now the student can see the instructions. Remember, we said that they can see the instructions, but not the description. If we had both, there would be descriptions here as well. It's a time test. That's because we said auto submit. So the student knows that the student test has a limit of 20 minutes. Forced completion is not checked on, so it can be saved and resumed at any point until time is expired. That means the student can close the browser, come back in, finish the test in that 20 minutes. So they only have space in that 20 minutes. And the student has multiple attempts and the due date. So that's the instructions that the students will get. Now we begin. Remember, we put in that password. So the student first needs to input that exact password, and we made it password. So that's what that is. And now it will allow, if the student puts in the wrong password, it will not allow them into the test. So be careful that your students have that. All right, so we're going to answer a couple correct and a couple incorrect so you can see the difference. So let's make this one a correct one, and the student just goes through the test. Now, remember, we said one at a time, and that's why it's only got one question on the board at a time. If we had presented all in one, we would have had a scroll bar here on the right, and you can scroll down to the next question, whereas in this case, we're going to go one by one. All right, that is the jumbled sentence question. So when I wake up in the morning, I first wash my face, Then I wash my dog. Maybe my morning is different than your mornings. You know, it's weird. Then I brush my teeth. And finally, I call my mom. So that's going to be mine. So this student only has 1 correct. Let's give them 2 correct. Let's leave it as that. It's fine. We can see. I don't know why I'm feeling bad for a student that doesn't exist. All right, there's my labeling. So I'm going to say here, I'm going to misspell nose. See what that does. And then this is legs, but I'm going to put in legs. See what that does. All right. Next one. This is the hotspot question. So indicate the nose. I'm going to click on the nose. This one was my multiple answer question. Not entirely sure why it's doing that. I think I accidentally clicked the bullet. We can go and have a look at it later. Choose 2 reptiles. So I'm going to choose 1 correct and 1 incorrect. All right. So Mary had a little lamb. It's fleece. Okay. So I'm going to get full marks for this one. Oops, that's not good for someone asking to write. So the student will get time to now type in a lot. So a student can type in a lot of, you know, an essay-sized response here. Okay, save and submit. I'm done with my test. Yes, I'm done. I'm happy. If the student missed any questions, it would have brought up a pop-up that said you missed some questions, but we answered all the questions. And here are my results. I always tell the students to take a little screenshot of this with the timestamp so that they can just save it for later if we need to find it or something. But this is not a proof of submission. It is so quick to Photoshop something in here, like another time or another name or something. I cannot tell you how many Photoshop versions of this I get a month where I have to tell the lecturer, listen, this is Photoshopped, it's not real. So we don't accept these as actual proof, but it is nice to have, you know, for the student to see when they wrote the test. If the lecturer asks later, they can say the exact timestamp. Okay, but remember, this is not proof of submission. I mean, these days a 5-year-old can Photoshop this to look like it's another student's. We've caught a bunch of them this year who tried that. So yeah. All right, once the student is done, they click OK. Now, remember, we said they get to see the score for each question, but not the answer. So I can see the question and the response feedback, but I cannot see the answers. Okay, that will come up later after the due date. All right. So I can see exactly how many I had, but remember, this one still needs to be marked. So I cannot see a total yet. So it's going to say status. Oops, sorry, needs marking. If you didn't have any of those question types like file response, short answer, or essay question, it would have the score for the student here out of 43. But they will now only see it after the lecturer has come in and marked it. And I'm going to show you what that looks like now. All right, so the student is done. This student has multiple attempts, so they can come back in and write another one. If they didn't have a multiple attempts, then it won't give them the option to write again. Let's just go back to my lecture view. I'm just going to refresh. And then we're going to go to, just want to close some of these tabs. We're going to go to grade center. So maybe this is after the end date, the due date. So I know all my students have written, and I'm going to go to needs marking. And then the student's attempt will be here. I can see exactly when they wrote to the second, and I can see when the due date was and if it was late or not. To mark the student's attempt, I just click on their name. And here I will see the test. Now, I can see that the questions that are automated already gave their answers. Okay, but I can go and change that. So I can put in 1 here. It's all up to you. So you can put in manual overrides as well if you want to. But what we really are looking for is that essay question that I want to mark. And then what I'm going to do here is input the mark and then save the test. Okay. Now, that feels like it's going to take a long time. I'm going to show you a way of just marking one question at a time if you want to, and that it makes it easier. But anyway, so now that we've marked all of our attempts, they are there's 0 needs marking. So we're going to move over to full grade center. And now I can see there's test 1 and there's that student's attempt on the 18th of March. And there it is. To access the test again, we can go and change it again. You just go to the corresponding row of the student in this column of the test, to that cell, click on it. And here you can view things like the mark details and the attempt. Mark details just show you things like the time, timestamp and things like that, who marked it. So if I go to mark history here, I can see which lecturer marked the test and which student uploaded the test and so on. But what I want to have a look at is the attempt itself. So I can just go back to the attempt, and there I see the attempt. And I can remark some of these. So if I later decided that I marked too strictly, I can come back here and adjust the mark. Okay, there we go. All right, another thing that you can do is you can go to the column of the test here, to that menu, and you can say mark questions. So if you have only one question, for instance, in all of those tests that you have to mark, for instance, we have the essay question, which is where here, we can say, I just quickly want to mark all of the essay questions, and it's going to bring up all of them. But now I've already marked it, so it's not actually bringing it up, but you will be able to see that essay question and mark it. Sorry, I just made it edited. There we go. Responses, we have to click on the responses. And then we can go and mark, but I've already marked it, but we can edit it. But now it's going to show you all of the students' answers for that one question. And you can quickly mark them and go through all of them much quicker than going through the needs marking. This is helpful if you have like 1 or 2 questions that are instructor input, but if you have a lot, then you might as well just go through the attempts one by one. So it depends on your student class and your test and everything. All right, colleagues, that's it for creating tests. We have a couple of minutes that we're already over, but let me give a couple of minutes for questions, and then I'll send later on, I'll send the recording to you. Please make sure that you, let me just go and get my questionnaire. Please fill in the attendance so that I have that for my reporting. Also remember that I have to report back to your assistant deans of teaching and learning. So if you don't complete the attendance, it will be like you're not here. So please make sure that you do complete it. I'm going to put it in the chat box. There we go. All right, so let me see some of the questions I have in the chat already. Okay. When asking a calculated formula question, can you make it a 2-part question where you use the answer of the first formula and then you have a second formula where the first answer is used? Okay, so I'm going to be honest, Peter, who's asking this question, calculated formula is not my strong suit because the math is, you know. So we've been through these. Let's have a look at them. So normally what I do here is I sit with a math person and we go through it and test what you're asking. So you're asking about a 2-parter now. So let's say formula. That's not correct, but anyway. So how a calculated formula works is the student answers in a formula. So this would be something like solve X, and then you would have something here, which I have no idea. And then the student has to input a certain formula. So I'm not sure about 2 parts, but the formula, as far as I understand, can be as long as you want. What I suggest is that you go to the question types on Blackboard and read the calculated formula one. Otherwise, send me an email. I have a couple of lecturers who use these regularly, and I can put you in contact with them and maybe they can explain it. Sorry, I'm not good with the math ones. So yeah, but yeah, it is quite instructive on how you have to define your variables and things. So maybe you as a math person will understand this better than I do. So I'm going to put this one, calculated formula, link straight into the chat box for you, so you can go and have a look at that. All right, any other questions? Feel free to put your questions in the chat box or put up your hand. Make sure to sign up for the attendance.
Hi, Leandre.
Hi, yes, go ahead.
I would like you to please make up a video or something for these students when, especially for the assessment or test time. Like you said, there are many who Photoshop things, no? And provide you evidence for the problem associated with the while they were doing online assessment. Please, can we have a video or some kind of information for these students, how to take a full screenshot or something when they have a network challenge or, connectivity problem or answer not getting saved, because you cannot see on those things they submit whether they logged in or somebody else logged in. You can't see the module code on some of the snapshot they send. So
Yeah.
I'm just requesting if it is possible.
Yes, that's something we can do. Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Hi, Leandri.
Yep.
This is Gustav. I just want to ask on the multiple choice, is it created the same way as the multiple answer?
Yes, exactly the same way. The only difference is when you move the radial, so let me show you, it moves it away from the previous one. So in the correct answers, it sets up exactly the same way, but now in the multiple answers, you can check both answer 1 and 2, for instance, whereas in multiple choice, if I check answer 2, it unchecks automatically answer 1.
Okay.
Yep.
And I can, when I go, once the test has been created, I can go in and view the answers.
Yeah.
I can view the memorandum, in other words. If I open it.
For instance, yeah, I am now on my instructor page, and this is my test that I created. So you can just go to edit the test to see the memorandum again. And this will show you which ones are right, what the variables are, etc., where they should have clicked, etc. And there's, for instance, the multiple answer. In a multiple choice, you'll only have one little check. You can also write the test as an instructor. So you can go to student preview mode if you want to do it all the way through, or you can just go into the test like a student would and then go through the test and make sure everything works and looks the way it should. So you can go through the whole test as the student would from the instructor point of view. It's not going to save it. It's not going to give you answers. It's just so you can see what it looks like when it's presented. So I'm just going to go straight to the end now. And then you can see what it would look like to the student. Exactly.
Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Leandri?
Yep, go ahead, please.
Yeah. I just want to ask if you want to make the answers visible, like for instance, the essay questions. If you want to see the students, the feedback or the answers on the question, do you have to put that answer in the feedback box, or will they be able to see the answer of your memo when you tick that boxes, when you say they will be able to see it after the due date?
So in our case, we had this question. Let me just go back. So for our essay question, we had an answer, this. Now, this is only visible to the student if in the, took me back there. In the options, you select that the correct answers or all answers are seen at a certain time. So in this case, we said after the due date, but you could have made that so that the student could see it after submission.
I don't have to repeat and copy and paste that answer to the feedback box.
No. If you have a question with a model answer like that, then you don't need to copy and paste it to the feedback box. They will see it if you check the all answers or the correct answers box. But remember, if you check all answers, that means whether they had the answer correct or incorrect, they will see it. But if you only want them to see the model answer, if they had it correct, you can check that box.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So if anyone had any challenges in this session, do remember that I recorded it and it's going to be up on our YouTube channel a little bit later today under the playlists, eThuto Talk. So here is every one of the eThuto Talks we've ever had. And I try and label them by dates. You can quickly find them. So this one will probably be at the very top because it's sorted No, actually it's sorted, so it will be at the bottom, but I'll start putting the 2022 ones at the top. So you can come and find the video here later on. I can also send it to you in those emails that you just put in the attendance. So you can come and find this if you had any trouble today following, or if I went too fast or anything like that. Otherwise, you're also welcome to send me or any of the other instructional designers an email with your questions, and we can go and have a Zoom meeting one-on-one and go through your problems. Ellen, you raised your hand. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask if I set the test and I want to check just like you did as a student, how do I do that?
So there are two ways you can do this. If you want to, you can go into student preview mode, but that's not going to work if the test has adaptive release or anything. So I just always click on it. So you go to your test where you deployed it as the student would have seen it, click on it, and it will give you a preview of the test, and you can just go and write the test exactly as the student would have written it. So you don't have to do anything special. You just click on the link and you write the test. Does that make sense?
So that means I'll be able to see the result and everything the way the student.
So you can write the test exactly and you see everything. You can see if it's...
For me,
lost my ears for a second there. Let me just mute here. All right, sorry. So you can even see if it marks your questions correctly and what they look like. So then you can work through your whole test. You can see how long, you can see it exactly as the student's going to see it. And you can see the results as well as the student will see it. So we say, for instance, that the student only sees the marks and that's all the student sees.
Thank you.
Okay.
Leon, just one last question.
Okay.
Just show again, where do you change that default mark of the test at the test setting?
So that is on the test canvas. So when you create a new test, you'll find that on the canvas. Otherwise, for an existing test, you can just go to the test, edit the test. So remember, if we edit the test, we edit the questions themselves. So the canvas. Options is all that back end stuff, like how the test is presented, what time parameters it has, etc. So you go to edit the test, and then at the top right here, you have a question settings button. And here you can change your default.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, colleagues, let's cut off here. Just want to make sure there's nothing new in the chat. All right, and then, like I said, we have that video will be up on YouTube later on. Also, really have a look at the YouTube channel if you haven't already. We have all of the videos here. So we have a playlist for the students, and we have videos that show them how to upload assignments, how to write tests, how to log in, everything that they need to know. We have all the videos for you, for facilitation, for instance, how to set up your Connect Yard and collaborate, for the grade center assignments and tests. So everything that I did in the training today is in 2 videos, creating the test. So this is the canvas, and then creating the options, the test options. So all of that is in here if you want to go and recap and you don't want to watch the whole long video again. All right, so I'm going to stop there for today. I hope you all learned something and that it wasn't too long. I just want to start the video and stop sharing. There we go. And then that's it for today. I hope you guys have a lovely weekend and a good Friday afternoon. And I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.